It was a clear Tuesday morning, September 11th, 2001. The skies over New York were bright and blue, the kind of morning that felt ordinary, peaceful, almost perfect. But within just a few hours, the world as we knew it would change forever. What started as a normal day ended in flames, dust, and chaos. Two massive towers, symbols of power, pride, and progress, would collapse in front of millions watching live around the world. This is the story of the Twin Towers, the mystery of their fall, and the controversies that have haunted that day for over 2 decades. But to understand what really happened, we need to go back to the beginning. In the 1960s, New York City was a global powerhouse. The Port Authority of New York and New Jersey wanted to create a monument to economic strength, something that would represent American dominance in global trade. Architect Minoru Yamasaki was chosen to design what would become the World Trade Center, two towers unlike anything the world had ever seen. Each tower would rise more than 110 stories, reaching 1,368 and 1,362 feet tall, making them the tallest buildings in the world at that time. Construction began in 1966, and by the early 1970s, the North Tower and South Tower dominated the Manhattan skyline. They weren't just buildings, they were icons. The heartbeat of Lower Manhattan. Tens of thousands of people worked there every day: bankers, brokers, traders, tourists, dreamers, and people believed these towers could withstand anything. Even the architects once claimed they were designed to survive the impact of a large passenger jet, but no one truly tested that belief. Until September 11th, 2001. At 8:46 a.m., American Airlines Flight 11 hijacked after takeoff from Boston slammed into the North Tower between floors 93 and 99. The world froze. People thought it was a tragic accident. Smoke and fire began to rise, black against the blue sky. But at 9:03 a.m., just 17 minutes later, United Airlines Flight 175 hit the South Tower between floors 77 and 85. Now it was clear this wasn't an accident. America was under attack. Another plane has just hit the World Trade Center. Panic spread across New York. Thousands of people trapped inside tried to escape the inferno. Some made desperate phone calls to loved ones. Others climbed down endless stairwells, while firefighters' heroes rushed up. And then something no one believed possible happened. At 9:59 a.m., the South Tower, the second tower hit, suddenly collapsed after burning for just 56 minutes. A massive cloud of dust and debris swallowed Lower Manhattan. People screamed, ran, fell to their knees. At 10:28 a.m., less than 30 minutes later, the North Tower followed, collapsing in almost identical fashion. Both buildings disintegrated into dust, steel and smoke falling straight down, almost at free fall speed. Within 2 hours, both towers were gone, and with them, nearly 3,000 lives. But as the dust settled, questions began to rise. How could two of the most structurally advanced skyscrapers in the world, designed to withstand plane impacts and even hurricane-force winds, collapse so completely and so fast? Why did Building 7, a 47-story skyscraper not hit by any plane, also collapse later that afternoon in a similar way? Was this truly the result of jet fuel and fire, or something more sinister? The official story claimed the towers fell because the jet fuel weakened the steel columns, causing a progressive collapse. But too many engineers, firefighters, and eyewitnesses, that explanation never felt complete. They described explosions, flashes of light, and sequences of bangs that sounded like controlled demolitions. One firefighter famously said, "It looked like they were being blown out from the inside. Boom, like charges going off." Could it really have been that simple, or was there more to the story? Within weeks, hundreds of theories began to circulate about inside jobs, missing evidence, intelligence warnings ignored, and financial motives hidden in the shadows. From the rubble of Ground Zero, a new kind of war was born, not just the war on terror, but a war on truth. Millions began asking, who benefited from the attacks? Why did US air defenses fail? And how could three massive steel buildings collapse from fire alone when no such thing had ever happened before? The world wanted answers, but the more answers they got, the more questions appeared. When the Twin Towers collapsed, the world witnessed something that defied logic. Two of the strongest buildings ever built simply disintegrated into dust. Steel columns, some weighing tons, were thrown hundreds of feet away. Concrete floors, office furniture, computers, even human remains. turned into fine gray powder. The question remained, how could fire alone cause such total destruction? The first official investigation came from FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, in May 2002. Their conclusion was cautious. The specifics of the fires and how they caused the buildings to collapse remain unknown at this time. Later, the National Institute of Standards and Technology (NIST) released its final report in 2005. According to NIST, the sequence went like this. 1. The planes severed many steel columns and dislodged the fireproofing insulation. 2. The jet fuel ignited massive fires that spread across multiple floors. 3. As temperatures rose above 1000 degrees Celsius, the steel weakened. 4. The floors began to sag, pulling on the exterior columns. 5. Eventually, the connections failed, leading to a chain reaction, one floor collapsing onto another in a progressive collapse. NIST insisted that no explosives were involved, just fire and structural failure. They claimed the towers didn't melt, but the weakened steel buckled under immense pressure. To many, that sounded convincing. But others weren't so sure. A growing group of experts, architects, and engineers for 9/11's truth began to publicly challenge the NIST report. Their argument was simple: office fires have never before or since caused a complete collapse of a steel-framed skyscraper. They pointed out that jet fuel burns at about 800 degrees Celsius, far below the 1500 degrees Celsius melting point of steel. The towers were designed to handle multiple plane impacts, and the symmetrical, straight-down collapse resembled a controlled demolition. Some structural engineers noted that for both towers to fall at nearly free-fall speed, every floor beneath the impact zone had to give way almost simultaneously. That kind of precision collapse, they said, would require pre-planted explosives or thermite, a chemical capable of cutting through steel like butter. Hundreds of witnesses, firefighters, police, survivors reported hearing explosions inside the towers before and during the collapses. One firefighter said, "We heard explosions coming from the lower floors, boom, 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 like someone was setting charges," a security guard described. There was an explosion in the basement before the plane even hit. Even people several blocks away reported feeling ground vibrations seconds before the buildings fell. In one of the most haunting recordings, a TV camera captured the moment the South Tower collapsed. A loud series of bangs echoed, one after another, like demolition blasts. At 5:20 p.m., hours after the Twin Towers had fallen, another building collapsed, World Trade Center 7. It was 47 stories tall, made entirely of steel and concrete. No plane had hit it. The fires inside were relatively small, limited to a few floors, yet the entire building fell straight down in about 6.5 seconds. For more than 7 years, there was no official explanation for this event. In 2008, NIST finally stated that uncontrolled fires caused thermal expansion that led to a global collapse, marking the first time in history a steel skyscraper had ever been brought down by fire alone. But many scientists rejected that idea. The building, they argued, fell symmetrically, just like a controlled demolition. Even NIST later admitted that WTC-7 experienced free-fall acceleration for over 2 seconds, meaning the lower structure offered zero resistance during part of the fall. To this day, WTC-7 remains one of the most controversial aspects of 9/11's. Normally, after a building collapse, engineers examine the debris to understand what went wrong. But in this case, most of the steel was quickly removed, shipped to scrap yards, and then exported to China before it could be thoroughly analyzed. For investigators, that decision was shocking. It was like cleaning up a crime scene before the detectives had arrived. Some metallurgical studies later found traces of sulfur and iron-rich microspheres in the dust signs, some claim of a thermite reaction. But NIST dismissed this, saying the materials came from normal fires and building contents. While the Twin Towers drew the world's focus, other strange events unfolded that morning. At 9:37 a.m., American Airlines Flight 77 struck the Pentagon, leaving a hole in one side of the building. But many questioned how a Boeing 757 could disappear into a hole barely 20 feet wide, with almost no visible debris or wing marks. Photographs showed little wreckage, and early footage was quickly confiscated by the FBI. Then there was Flight 93, which crashed in a field in Pennsylvania. The official story said passengers fought back against hijackers, a heroic act that prevented another target from being hit. Yet witnesses miles away claimed to see debris falling from the sky before the crash, suggesting the plane might have exploded mid-air. Was it shot down to prevent it from reaching Washington, D.C.? The US government never fully confirmed nor denied that possibility. Let's look at the physics of what happened. Each twin tower had 47 massive core columns and 236 perimeter columns. When the planes hit, they destroyed roughly 10% of the columns in each impact zone. Yet that alone shouldn't have caused a total collapse. If the upper section fell onto the lower part, the momentum would have been absorbed gradually, but instead the entire structure fell almost uniformly floor by floor with incredible speed. According to Newton's laws, such acceleration could only happen if the lower resistance suddenly vanished, as if something was removing support column by column. And then there's the pulverization: concrete turned to dust, steel beams sliced cleanly, and molten metal reportedly seen flowing beneath ground zero 4 weeks after the collapse. Firefighters described it as like a foundry down there, molten steel running like lava. Jet fuel, however, burns at temperatures far below what's needed to melt steel. So where did that molten metal come from? Could it be the result of explosives, thermite, or some other classified military compound? Many independent researchers who questioned the official narrative found themselves ignored, discredited, or even silenced. Major news outlets rarely discussed the discrepancies. Government officials insisted, "We must never tolerate outrageous conspiracy theories," but silence only deepened suspicion. For every mystery explained, new ones emerged: black box recorders never found, air defense drills running the same morning, and unusual stock trades made just days before the attacks. So what really happened behind the scenes? Was it incompetence, coincidence, or something orchestrated? By the afternoon of September 11, 2001, the Twin Towers were gone. The Pentagon was burning and America was in a state of shock. But behind the chaos and the smoke, something else began to move quietly, strategically, and with purpose. Within hours, the narrative was set. The attacks were carried out by Al-Qaeda, led by Osama bin Laden, operating from the mountains of Afghanistan. But as days passed, questions surfaced, questions that didn't fit the official story. Because if you follow the money, the power, and the politics, a darker picture begins to emerge. At 8:30 p.m. that same evening, President George W. Bush addressed the nation. America was targeted for attack because we were the brightest beacon for freedom and opportunity in the world. Within days, Congress passed the Patriot Act, giving the government unprecedented surveillance powers over its citizens. Airports turned into military checkpoints, phones could be tapped without warrants, and intelligence agencies gained control like never before. And then, just weeks later, America launched Operation Enduring Freedom, the invasion of Afghanistan, a war that would last 2 decades, costing trillions of dollars and countless lives. Before 9/11, the Bush administration had close ties to oil corporations and defense contractors. Vice President Dick Cheney, for instance, was the former CEO of Halliburton, a company that would later earn billions in military contracts from wars in the Middle East. It was no secret that Afghanistan held strategic importance: pipelines, minerals, and geographic control, and Iraq, which would be invaded 2 years later, possessed one of the world's largest oil reserves. Some analysts claimed that 9/11 provided the perfect justification to start wars that had already been planned. As one insider famously said, the 9/11 attacks were the new Pearl Harbor, the event needed to mobilize public opinion. This phrase wasn't random. It came from a 2000 document by the think tank Project for the New American Century (NAC), whose members included several top officials of the Bush administration. The report stated, "The process of transformation is likely to be a long one, absent some catastrophic and catalyzing event like a new Pearl Harbor." A year later, that event happened. In the days leading up to September 11th, financial analysts noticed something unusual: massive put options being placed on American Airlines and United Airlines. Put options are bets that a stock will fall in value, and after the attacks, those stocks indeed plummeted, generating millions in profit for those who had placed the bets. Investigations later revealed that the trades were made through firms with links to major intelligence agencies. But despite the clear evidence of foreknowledge, the 9/11 Commission report dismissed it as coincidence. To this day, the identities of the investors have never been made public. What if the US government knew something was coming but failed or chose not to act? Between early 2001 and summer that year, multiple intelligence agencies from France, Germany, Israel, and even inside the US warned that planes could be used as weapons in upcoming attacks. In August 2001, just a month before the tragedy, President Bush received a classified memo titled, "Bin Laden Determined to Strike in US." The memo specifically mentioned possible plans to hijack airplanes. Yet no preventive measures were taken. Air defense protocols were confused, delayed, and ineffective on the day of the attacks. Fighter jets scrambled in the wrong directions, and communication between NORAD and FAA broke down mysteriously. Was it incompetence or deliberate inaction? Let's look deeper. Osama bin Laden, once America's most wanted man, was originally funded and trained by the CIA during the Soviet-Afghan War in the 1980s. At that time, the US called him a freedom fighter, a hero against the Russians. So when the same man was later accused of orchestrating the 9/11 attacks, many questioned, had he gone rogue? Or was he still a piece on someone else's chessboard? Adding to the mystery, several of the alleged hijackers were later found alive in other countries, claiming their identities had been stolen. Saudi Arabia, the home country of most hijackers, faced no retaliation. Instead, the US went to war with Afghanistan and later Iraq, which had no connection to 9/11s. Right after the attacks, when all commercial flights in the US were grounded, one group was given special permission to fly, members of the bin Laden family and Saudi royals. Over 140 Saudis were quietly flown out of the country, approved by US officials, while American airspace was closed. Why were they allowed to leave when the entire country was on lockdown? Why wasn't the world's most powerful intelligence network questioning the family of the prime suspect? Here's something few people know. On September 10, 2001, the day before the attacks, U.S. Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld announced that the Pentagon couldn't account for $2.3 trillion money that had simply vanished from records. The very next day, the plane that hit the Pentagon struck the exact section of the building where those financial documents were stored. Coincidence? Or destruction of evidence? Similarly, reports suggest that beneath the World Trade Center complex, there were vaults filled with gold and silver bullion belonging to banks and the U.S. Treasury. After the collapse, hundreds of millions worth of gold were reportedly missing. Some of it was later found melted and fused under rubble, but a large portion was never recovered. After 9/11s, the defense industry and oil corporations saw record profits. Government spending on security and surveillance skyrocketed. Private military contractors multiplied overnight. New agencies like the Department of Homeland Security were formed with billions in funding. Fear became a political tool, one that could justify wars, censorship, and endless expansion of state power. As one political analyst said, 9/11 changed not just America's foreign policy, but its soul. Many researchers believe the attacks were used to reshape the world order, to centralize power, justify war, and manipulate global politics under the banner of security. The term New World Order resurfaced, a global agenda aiming for total control through fear and surveillance. Mass data collection, face recognition, phone tapping, biometric systems all grew from the seeds planted on 9/11s, and with the wars that followed, trillions of dollars flowed through hidden networks while ordinary people paid the price in taxes, fear, and lost freedom. Consider this. On the morning of 9/11s, multiple military exercises were running simulating hijacked airplanes. This caused real confusion when the actual attacks began. The Twin Towers security systems had been upgraded just weeks earlier by a firm with links to government officials, and power downs in the towers days before the attack allowed unrestricted access to maintenance crews. Coincidence? Or preparation? The deeper we dig, the darker it gets. So many coincidences. So many unanswered questions, and yet millions still believe the official story without doubt. Maybe it's easier that way, because the alternative, that there were layers of planning, manipulation, and hidden motives, would mean the world isn't as simple as we think. More than 2 decades have passed since that September morning. Yet the shadow of the Twin Towers still stretches across history, long and unbroken. The world has moved forward, buildings have been rebuilt, flags have been raised again. But beneath the concrete, behind the memorials and the words "never forget," a silent question still echoes. What really happened on 9/11s? Even after years of reports, commissions, and investigations, many corners of this story remain shrouded in mystery. Eyewitnesses still recall flashes, sounds, and sequences that never made it into official documents. Firefighters still remember explosions they swore came from deep within the towers. and experts from architects to engineers continue to question the way the buildings collapsed straight down in near-perfect symmetry. Was it truly just a combination of fire, heat, and design failure? Or was something else hidden in plain sight? In the aftermath of the tragedy, nearly all the steel from the World Trade Center was quickly shipped overseas, much of it to China before it could be thoroughly analyzed. To many, that decision was strange. Why would one of the most significant structural collapses in modern history be removed so quickly? Government officials said the cleanup was urgent, a matter of health and safety. But skeptics wondered if it was also a matter of erasing clues. Even years later, independent researchers requested samples, reports, and building blueprints, often to find that they were sealed, restricted, or missing entirely. Each unanswered question deepened the mystery. Each gap in information invited more theories, more possibilities, and more doubt. The 9/11 attacks didn't just destroy buildings, they redesigned the world. In their aftermath, nations changed policies, tightened borders, built surveillance systems, and launched wars that lasted for decades. The war on terror became a new era, one that reshaped global politics and personal freedoms, and yet many noticed something strange. The tragedy seemed to benefit certain political and economic powers. Defense budgets exploded, oil contracts multiplied, and the same regions blamed for the attacks became the center of long, profitable wars. To some, it was coincidence. To others, it was design, because behind every great event in history, there are those who gain from the outcome. There are still parts of the story that have never been fully explained. Why were military air defenses so delayed that morning, despite multiple warnings? Why did Building 7, untouched by any plane, collapse in the same way as the towers? And why were certain financial transactions, massive stock trades, and insurance deals placed just days before the attack? Coincidence or calculation? The official reports mention some of these questions, but not all, and in the silence of those missing pages, 1,000 theories have been born. Some believe 9/11 was a tragedy exploited by those in power. Others believe it was something far more deliberate, a carefully crafted operation of deception. And while evidence remains scattered, one thing is clear. The full truth of 9/11 has never been completely revealed. Today, where the Twin Towers once stood, two vast pools of black water reflect the sky. Names of the lost are carved into stone, a symbol of remembrance and a promise that they will never be forgotten. But for those who still seek the truth, those pools are also a mirror reflecting the deep void left in human understanding. Every year, millions come to pay their respects. Some come to mourn, some come to heal, and some come to search for answers that history has yet to give. Because even now, under the calm surface of memory, questions still ripple quietly. Was it only about terror? Or was it about control? Did the towers fall because of steel and fire? Or because of secrets too dark to reveal? No one can say for certain. Time has tried to bury that day under layers of history. New wars, new leaders, new fears. But the echo of that collapse still vibrates through every generation. Children born after 2001 grow up seeing the images, the planes, the flames, the falling towers, and wonder how such a thing could happen. And those who lived through it still remember where they were, what they saw, and the disbelief that filled the air. But somewhere between what we remember and what we were told lies a gray space. A place where truth fades into silence, and silence becomes legend. That is where the mystery of 9/11 lives, not just in conspiracy, but in curiosity. In humanity's endless quest to understand the events that change our world forever, the fall of the Twin Towers wasn't just the destruction of two buildings. It was the collapse of certainty itself. It reminded us that even the strongest structures of steel, of power, of belief can fall in a moment. And maybe that's the greatest mystery of all, not just how the towers fell, but why we may never truly know everything about that day. The Twin Towers are gone, but their story still stands tall in memory, in mystery, and in the unending search for truth. Thank you for watching Universal TV Explorer, where we uncover the untold, explore the unexplained, and question the forgotten. If you found this story fascinating, make sure to like, subscribe, and share it with those who still see cancers in the shadows of history, because sometimes the truth doesn't hide in the dark, it hides in the light we refuse to see.